Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Vasquez here, coming to you live. Actually rained into our hotel right now, so I'm going to use this time to complete my review of this new article published out of Harvard Medical School. Can you imagine that, Harvard Medical School? I mean, this has to be like the best research article ever published if it came out of Harvard Medical School with all these affiliations and all these professionals. I mean, these are high-level professionals, right? These are all MDs and what is it, the other? DRPH, Doctor of Public Health is one of them, and PhDs. I mean, all these people have studied medicine and statistics their whole lives. So this has to be like a perfect research article, right? Maybe so. So all of what I just said is consistent with something called the genetic fallacy or the origin fallacy. So if you believe something just because it was published by Harvard Medical School, or if it was published in a scientific journal, or if it was published, under all these different institutions. I mean, look at all these different institutions that participated in this publication. Harvard Medical School, Harvard School of Public Health, Smith College Program in Statistical and Data Sciences, Fenway Institute, Beth Israel Medical Center and Harvard Medical School, Department of Biostatistics. I mean, my goodness, this thing has been analyzed inside and out. University of Massachusetts. I mean, come on, you can't reasonably argue with the entire University of Massachusetts, much less the Department of Epidemiology at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health at Harvard University. I mean, come on, who are you? Who are you to argue with Harvard School of Medicine? Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Department of Medicine, McGill University. I mean, come on, this is endorsed by all these international level schools. I mean, who would you be to question such a document? Karolinska, whatever it is, it's famous. This institute in Sweden, I mean, come on. Department of Global Public Health, I mean, these people must know everything. They not only know public health, but they know global public health. What else? Another school in Sweden, Department of Life Sciences, University of Technology, I mean, come on. What's better than a University of Technology? Department of Internal Medicine, Mongolian Medicine, International School of Mongolian Medicine in Mongolia. Huh. This thing must be perfect. This thing must be the epitome of science. It was just published. I mean, all of the accumulation of human knowledge is within this document. This was published in March of 2026. I mean, this has to be like the highest possible level of science. Gonna scoot that over just a little bit. So, like I said yesterday in my quick, spontaneous outdoor review or introduction, I should say, before it started raining. This is a very important article. We're talking about a very important treatment target, which is pandemic infectious diseases. I mean, this could hardly be more important. So it's a very important treatment target. We're talking about a very important intervention directly. We're talking about vitamin D, which I believe controls about 3% of the human genome. So it's very important. I've written articles on vitamin D now for the past 22 years. Like I've said before, I am the original gangster of vitamin D because I wrote The Paradigm Shift back in 2004. So the original gangsters, if I may say so, the original gangsters of vitamin D were Reinhold Weiss, who completely inverted everything we knew about vitamin D in his publication in 1999 in American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. So Reinhold Weiss is obviously a vitamin D gangster. Let's see who else. Another guy published an article in 2003. I'm not remembering his name right now. But he said, his article was actually titled as a question. He said, "Are we ignoring the evidence?" So he wrote that in 2003. And I basically responded in 2004 with saying, yeah, we're ignoring the evidence and this deserves a paradigm shift. Let's see. Robert Heaney, the now late Robert Heaney, was absolutely a gangster of vitamin D. So he published a lot of primary research. And without his research, we would not have been able to advance the paradigm. So, those are some of the historical features, and obviously some others who sometimes did good work and sometimes didn't. One of them was a notorious MD, PhD who published a lot of articles on vitamin D, and then he would conclude by saying, oh, well, people need to take 1,000 international units per day, which is completely absurd. So, he did a lot of academic documentation, but then his clinical application was completely absurd. Anyway, going back to this, vitamin D is a very important intervention directly. It's also very important indirectly because vitamin D solves a lot of problems like depression, anxiety, chronic pain, certain autoimmune diseases, even certain types of cancer have been shown, well, many different types of cancer have been shown to respond, at least partially, to vitamin D. So if you were to look at vitamin D as a therapeutic by itself, it has a lot of importance. If you look at it in the competitive market of therapeutics, then it also has importance because it's competing with pain drugs, depression drugs, mental health drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs, anti-allergy drugs. So that explains why the medical profession and, of course, the holier-than-thou holy grail of vaccines. So, which you can't even talk about. I mean, no one can even question the topic of vaccines without being called like a quack or a medical heretic or you don't know science or whatever. I mean, anybody who even questions the vaccine paradigm is, at some, vulnerability or liability of being censored or lose their jobs or lose their license. So, again, for the third time at least, vitamin D is a very important intervention, but like I said, in the marketplace of medicine, it also competes with some multi-billion-dollar drugs. And I think that explains why the medical profession as a whole is always trying to misunderstand vitamin D. If they can continue to confuse the topic and continue to misunderstand it, then they can continue pushing their drugs and therapeutics and bastardized protocols that do more harm than good, including, for example, one of the most black and white examples is a drug that was never approved for anything and then all of a sudden was approved for the treatment of COVID. And I've reviewed this previously. It's a drug called molnupiravir, was never approved for anything and then all of a sudden found a home in this pandemic response. So how could it have gone from being rejected to now it goes from being rejected to standard of care used in all the protocols like overnight? Well, it was based on bullshit research. The research was so bad that the drug companies, first of all, never published it in a scientific journal. They didn't even disclose the complete data set. They didn't show the adverse effects. They didn't show all of the data, and yet the government in the United States approved it, and therefore, after the U.S. approved it, then other countries also approved it, and it became standard protocol, even though the approval, so-called approval of the drug, was based on failure to disclose the evidence of efficacy and danger. And when I did a side-by-side comparison of molnupiravir against vitamin D, vitamin D was 100 times cheaper, I believe. Yeah, because molnupiravir cost $700 a dose, and vitamin D maybe cost $7 a dose. And vitamin D was far more effective. And so, here we are, 7 years into the pandemic response. They're still pushing this bullshit narrative, and they're continuing to deny the efficacy of vitamin D. I'm going to stop for a moment and just turn off my internet so we don't get any messages. So again, my list here, number one, very important treatment target, very important intervention, major implications for international government, healthcare, travel policies. Because like I have said previously, and as everyone, of course, knows by now, if they can create the illusion that no alternative exists other than these drugs and vaccines, then they can mandate that, but they can only mandate that for work and travel and civil liberties. They can only say that that's mandatory if everything else fails. So they have to keep creating this artificial failure of other treatments in order to justify the medical hegemony model. So that's why I say this has major implications for public policy, healthcare, travel policies. Important to review this topic to see if it represents appropriate use of public funds of tens up to hundreds of millions of dollars. So I'm reasonably guessing that the totality of this research for sure cost tens of millions of American dollars, because this was at least partially funded by the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health in the United States. And I've reviewed the work of this particular author before, Joanne E. Manson. She is a DRPH, as I recall. So it's kind of like a PhD in public health, Doctor of Public Health. And I have reviewed her work now several times, and I find her work to be utterly stupid every time she publishes anything. It's the dumbest level of work I can possibly imagine reading. And she's published very broadly. So she's obviously very well connected. I've never read or heard in her videos. I've never seen or heard her say anything of any level of intelligence on the topic of vitamin D, and yet she gets tens of millions of dollars to publish medical propaganda against vitamin D. So, on the one hand, she's a world-famous vitamin D researcher, but on the other hand, if you actually look at her work, it's all anti-vitamin D. So she publishes on the topic of vitamin D, but her conclusions are always that vitamin D doesn't work. Or they try to structure the studies in such a way that they cannot possibly find an optimal outcome. Now, they may find a little bit of benefit, but it's almost by accident. It's almost like they did everything possible to try to minimize the benefit, and then they couldn't help but find some benefit, and then they had to publish it. And then they say, oh, well, yeah, reduce the incidence of cancer and autoimmune disease by X amount. That was one of their findings, even though it's purely by accident. They habitually underdose and they kind of underschedule, we might say. The dose is too low, the duration is too short, and so they usually don't find what I would consider to be optimal benefit because they don't want to find optimal benefit. So, those are two of the most common strategies in medical research that's trying to discredit nutritional intervention is they use a low dose, or they use a highly toxic dose, or they use bolus dosing in the case of vitamin D, which is both toxic and ineffective for reasons that I've discussed previously. Sorry, I'm getting a message I have to respond to. So I'm okay. But like I have said before, I always try to keep these videos as short as possible, but sometimes I just keep going. That's because the whole conversation is details, and the details matter. So again, the way to sabotage nutrition research is too low of a dose, too high of a dose, too short of a duration, and lack of cofactors. So most nutrients work together with other nutrients, like vitamin D works with selenium and works with magnesium especially, and works with vitamin K2. So, when they address a vitamin deficiency like vitamin D, but they fail to address the 70% of people who have magnesium deficiency, I believe 30% of people who have zinc deficiency, and the 15% with selenium deficiency, then you can see that a monotherapeutic intervention is almost designed to fail simply by its design. So that's an example of using the drug paradigm to do nutrition research. Most drugs, of course, work singly. They work by themselves. In contrast, most nutrients work in tandem with other nutrients. So I'll try to keep making progress here. But again, Joanne E. Manson has received, I am guessing, but I'm guessing quite reasonably, tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, for her research on vitamin D, and all of her work is just, in my opinion, pathetic. So in the process of reviewing her work, including this one, which may have just been a side project for her, she's obviously the last author, we are still, within the scope of conversation to discuss the appropriate or inappropriate use of public funds. This has very important implications for insurance reimbursement and determining which professions get funding or insurance payments. So, for example, if they can continue to denigrate the importance of nutrition while always inflating the benefit of drugs, then that slants political policy and financial policy in favor of the medical profession. So in other words, they have to keep the medical profession kind of brainwashed and controlled in order for them to fulfill their job of selling drugs. And if they do that sufficiently, then they get priority. They get better insurance reimbursement, et cetera, because the system doesn't want that insurance reimbursement going to nutritionists. Sorry, I'm a little dehydrated right now, and I don't have any water at all. So in order to slant financial power and therefore political power in favor of people who sell drugs, they have to publish, again, low-level research like this, because you sure as hell don't want the nutritionists having a say in things and getting reimbursement. And you certainly wouldn't want chiropractors over here using nutrition to, provide more benefits. So I've already looked at the research on the clinical interventions using adequately dosed vitamin D against this pandemic infection. And the studies that were done correctly showed massive benefit, like 80% cure and 80% life-saving benefit of appropriately dosed vitamin D in the treatment of this condition. Whereas the other studies that maybe used the wrong dose or a low dose or a toxic dose or a bolus dose, they didn't show any benefit whatsoever, and you wouldn't expect them to show benefit. So again, if you've got nutritionists and chiropractors over here using nutrients, and it's actually better than the drugs and the vaccines, that would invert the entire insurance reimbursement schedule and therefore give more money to people who are not so completely aligned with the drug paradigm. And also, as I said here, point number 6, if they can continue to say that nutrition is ineffective and that the only salvation is vaccines and drugs, then they can also supposedly justify censoring anyone who talks about nutrition. Like, I've been deplatformed off of every platform, and the few platforms I am on, I'm shadow banned. So my emails don't arrive. They make it difficult for me to upload my videos on a certain platform that has my name, and then on another platform within the same platform, actually, that doesn't have my name on it, I can upload my videos much faster. But part of being shadow banned is reduced functionality of the website and also reduced distribution of my information. So, I appear on the platform, but they make it complicated. And an example of that is Facebook. I had to totally give up on Facebook. I'm banned, I'm blocked, I can barely say anything on there. And every time I want to get into Facebook in the account that I've had now for 20 years, which I don't even care about anymore, I don't even pay attention to it. But I have had that same account now for 20 years or so, and every time I want to use it, I have to log in again. I have to confirm in a different program my password. So, I mean, I'm shadow banned to the point of just being completely blocked. So, anyway, all of that is part of, appreciating the impact of bullshit research like this. All the way from science to integrity to public funding to insurance reimbursement to censorship and disemployment, because some people lost their jobs simply for talking about nutrition. So, my personal title of this review is Harvard Bullshit, because this is bullshit. This is bullshit research. I hope you've looked at it by now. I sent it out yesterday so that you would have a chance to look at it. So I'm stating, black and white, rocks are hard, water is wet, and this is bullshit research. Let me just look for one little note real quick. Nothing.